This will be the most complete video guide on how to start rock climbing for complete beginners.
Let me take you on an adventure.
We are going to talk about where and what. We are going to talk about your personal fitness and mental space. We're going to talk about the clothing and the way that you need to dress. We're going to talk about gear. We're going to talk about grades. We're going to talk about the basic skills that you need and why. At the very end, I'm going to throw in some creative writing that I've done on why climbing. So if you want to skip to that, or if you want to skip to any of these because it's going to be a really long topic, go ahead and move around. I will have kind of a timeline for you down in the description below so you can see that. My name is Sam, and I'm going to be doing this shooting from the hip mostly. I do have an outline on how we're going to do this, but I'm going to be shooting from the hip. Now, I can do this confidently because I have been climbing since 1995. Some of you, that's before you were even a twinkle in your father's eye. I've also owned and operated a climbing gym, and I've brought many, many people into the world of climbing. So let's get into it. First thing we're going to talk about is where. Where can you go climbing? This is something that you need to answer to yourself before we get into the rest of this category. So the ways that you can go, or the avenues rather, that you can go climbing are as follows. Indoor bouldering or rock climbing. Indoor climbing is a great avenue for people to get into climbing. And climbing gyms are starting to pop up everywhere, and they're continuing to be built across the nation, really across the world. People have reached out to me from all over on how to build a climbing gym, and it's becoming more and more popular as time goes on. So indoor is a great way. Now, somebody that grew up before all of these climbing gyms were so accessible in an area that outdoor climbing was readily available. I love outdoor climbing. And a great way to find if there is outdoor climbing in your area is go online, do a research. One of the websites that I used to really love, it's getting harder for me to use because I'm not super tech savvy, but it's mountainproject.com. I wish it would go back before Onyx purchased the company, but, progression, I suppose. It's still a really, really great resource to see where the climbing areas are and if there's something near you. Now, inside of that, including indoor climbing, there are different genres of rock climbing. So let's talk about that. First, bouldering. Bouldering is where you need very limited gear. You can do it by yourself, although it's not recommended. I would highly recommend having a group or at least one other person with you while you're bouldering. This can be indoors or outdoors. You're going to stay typically below 10 feet in your climbing. So you're not gonna climb much higher than 10 feet unless you start getting into highball bouldering, which increases your risk level. And I would highly recommend for beginners not to highball. Just keep it low there. The next thing is going to be sport or top rope. And I am going to put those together in the same thing. Now, if there's some climbers, seasoned climbers that are watching this, you might be screaming at me right now. No, they are totally different. They are different, but they can be grouped into the same thing because of how you approach it. So top roping, you're going to set up a rope from the top and then climb. With sport climbing, the reason why I think it's somewhat similar is because you have fixed anchors on the rock face that you clip into as you go up. So it takes some of the technicality out of it, which is the next genre, which is trad or traditional. Now, traditional climbing, you are taking pieces up like these right here and wedging these into the crack, and that's what you're clipping to keep you safe. And it's a lot more technical, and I wouldn't recommend it for beginner climbers unless you have a really good mentor that is willing and able to teach you how to do that. And when you get to the point where you are ready to jump into trad climbing, you're going to have a mentor there. You need somebody in person to show you what to do with these guys to keep you safe. Bouldering is another genre, although that's usually illegal. So I'm not going to cover bouldering. So there's the different types of climbing that you can get into. The most beginner friendly is going to be sport climbing or top roping, followed by bouldering. Where you're at in the world is also going to kind of dictate where you go climbing, because for me, the closest boulder field is an hour and a half away, which for some, that's not too bad. For others, that's a long ways. When I grew up, there was climbing everywhere. I grew up in Utah, and it was anywhere from a half an hour to 15 minutes, really quality climbing, really good stuff. So I was kind of spoiled in that. Let's talk about your personal fitness and your mental space next. Personal fitness may seem like a barrier for some. However, I have seen probably the most heavy people that have tried climbing ever, and they've been able to do it. And it's super inspiring. These are people that are so overweight, it is hard for them to be mobile, to walk down the sidewalk. And they can come in and start pulling on holds. And it is super good for them because it gives you a good mental space to say, yes, I can be active. And you can really get yourself into a position where you're healthy. Weight to power ratio is definitely a thing in rock climbing. So if you are just naturally lightweight, you have the genes to excel at this. When you get into it, most people are going to feel it in your forearms first, right in here, and the skin of your fingertips, because you need to get that strengthened. The fingertips, they aren't as strong typically as far as the skin goes. So you're going to start to develop some soft calluses, which will benefit you in other areas of your life as well if you do any work with your hands. Your forearms aren't used to really gripping stuff. Now, when you're a brand new climber, you're probably going to be over gripping everything, so that's going to wear these out even faster. But as you start to get into it, your forearms are going to get stronger, that grip strength is going to be stronger, and then it's going to start to develop into a whole body workout. I just went climbing a few days ago, and I feel it a lot right in my back as far as my muscle fatigue goes. When you start climbing, it is really important, regardless of whether you are a seasoned climber or brand new, to just slowly get into it. Allow your body enough time to warm up and get that blood really flowing before you start to really try hard on these boulder problems or these routes that you've selected to try to climb. There's a high possibility that you will get to a point where you injure yourself. However, I look at that and say, congratulations. You are living your life. Get out. Don't be afraid of that. Now, I had a shoulder injury that I got from training. I didn't warm up properly. And that shoulder injury was really, really hurting me. I couldn't lift anything. And I went for about 2 months without being able to use my left arm very much. This company reached out to me and said, hey, we want you to try this muscle cream and promote it. And I was like, I'm not promoting stuff on my channel, but I'll give it a try. If it fixes my shoulder, no way it's going to do that. I'll promote it. When I first tried it, I didn't feel an immediate benefit from it, but I continued to use it. And after a week, my shoulder, which has been really hurting me and holding me back for 2 months, was completely better. So guess what, guys? I'm going to stay true to my word and I'm going to promote this product because it is amazing. This product is right here. And if you have any injuries, check this out. And I have a discount code for you down in the description below where you can get yourself some Mujo. This stuff really brought my mojo back into climbing. So thank you, Mujo, for showing and sharing this product with us. And I truly mean that, guys. I do want Climber Dad to be a legit business, but my business model is not going to be through sponsorships like this. However, if something comes up that is truly going to benefit you, I would like to share it with you, and I hope that you're okay with that. Now let's get into clothing and how we should dress for climbing. This is going to be really opinion-based, okay? So this is Climber Dad's opinion. There is one thing, though, that I would say is not really Climber Dad opinion, but should be out there universal. If you have long hair, don't care what your pronouns are. If you have long hair, tie that back. Get it out of the way, because this gear, like let's say a gree-gree, it can be sitting right here, and if you're looking down, you get that your hair wrapped up into this. It's not a good thing. So if you have long hair, pull that back. Now, I just wear comfortable clothing. I stay away from shorts. And the reason that I stay away from shorts is because if I'm climbing in shorts, I'm going to scrape up my legs really bad. And I don't like to have nasty scrapes on my legs. On my arms, I'm used to that. But on my legs, I want to keep that protected. But wear clothing that allows good movement. Also, wear clothing that you're going to be comfortable with, especially if you're in a climbing gym. People are going to be looking at you. So if you don't want people looking at your butt, then don't wear yoga pants. Seriously. I don't even know. If you have any questions about what I'm talking about, please comment down below. And if I've missed something or you disagree with something, let's continue that conversation in those comments, because it will add so much more to the community. Thank you for doing that. Now that we've covered that, let's go into gear. Gear for beginners. Now I have a big spread of gear. This isn't even a quarter of the gear that I've got, but you don't need this as a beginner. We're going to talk about the basics for beginners. Now, when I was going over this topic with my wife, she said if it's going to be the ultimate guide for beginner climbers, you need to talk about all of it. So I've got a sample of everything. The first thing that you're going to need as a beginner climber is some climbing shoes. Yes, climbing shoes are super important. You can go out there and scramble on some rocks just fine without climbing shoes, but when you want to start actually rock climbing, climbing shoes are a tool that you need. If you're going to a gym, they can easily be rented, but if you want to really commit to it, climbing shoes are going to be the first thing that you're going to purchase. I actually have 2 pairs of climbing shoes. This is one of my pairs right here. The other pair is wrapped up in a crash pad, which I'll talk about later, but I have a sample of that as well. Now, these are my advanced shoes. They're the shoes, I call it the try-hard shoes. And as a beginner, you don't need this type of shoe. Don't worry about it. And I'm going to show you this shoe just so you know, don't worry about this type of shoe. This is an aggressive shoe. It's supposed to fit really tight on your foot so you can have ultimate control over everything, and that shoe isn't rotating on your foot. It has rubber up here over the toe. It has a really good area for heel hooking back here, and the toe is turned down. So this is a shoe, as a beginner, I would highly recommend staying away from these advanced shoes. They aren't going to benefit you. Yes, get them further down the road of your climbing journey when you start to climb harder stuff. Now, the shoes that I wear almost every time, I rarely wear these shoes. Actually, I should probably put them on just to make sure that they're fitting to my feet. But the shoe that I recommend the most is going to be a neutral shoe. Now, I've got some brand new ones back here. This specific shoe is the Butora Advanced, and I think that it is the absolute best shoe for beginners. And it's not only for beginners, you can use this shoe throughout your climbing journey, and it's the shoe that I wear almost every time when I go out climbing. The toe is nice and straight. It's nice and flat. You have a good heel area back here, but it's nothing crazy. And you have a little bit of rubber up here on the toe. Also, another feature about this shoe is that it's pretty stiff. Now, that can be a drawback, but for a beginner climber, this is going to allow you a little bit better control on your toes because you're used to standing flat on the ground instead of on these little edges that you would be standing on as a climber. So this shoe will help you with that. Now, this isn't the only shoe that's good for beginners, but it is a really good shoe, and it shows some of those features that you want in a shoe as a beginner climber. Namely, look for a neutral toe shoe. So this is going to be nice and flat right here. It's been a while since I've bought new shoes because I have a whole room of old back stock from when I owned a climbing gym. But I think they're right around $100 that you're going to be spending on a beginner shoe. And when I say beginner shoe, it's not a shoe that's going to hold you back. You can climb some really hard stuff in these shoes. Another company that makes really good shoes that you might want to take a look at for beginners and intermediate and advanced, but specifically for beginners, is the company Mad Rock. I do like their Mad Rock shoes. I think that they work really good. The very next thing that you're going to purchase as a climber, regardless of what type of climbing you do, is going to be a chalk bag. They don't have to be special. This is just a bag that's designed to hold climbing chalk in, where you can reach in and chalk your hands. So this right here is a little dry bag that I have for my chalk, because chalk will get everywhere. So to help keep that down at a minimum, I throw it in a small dry bag. I got this. It is just like a couple bucks. It's not that expensive. Wrap it up. And now I don't have to worry about my chalk getting everywhere on my gear. Another type of chalk bag it's called a chalk bucket. This is from Kinetic Climbing. I really like this chalk bucket because of the closure that it has. This is full of chalk, and I can tip it upside down and it's not going to spill out yet. It's fairly easy to access that chalk. Reach in there. Oh, I've got so much chalk in here. I'm going to pull that out. I'm chalked up. I'm ready to go. Now, if you are going to be doing roped climbing in any form, you're also going to want to get your own harness. Now, when you get your harness, I would highly recommend not buying your harness online. I would also not recommend buying your climbing shoes online. You really want to put those on before you buy them. The same thing goes with your harness. For your first harness, go to a store or a gym that sells them where you can talk to somebody that knows about harnesses. This is what a climbing harness looks like right here. Oh, we're twisted up here. There we go. Yeah, that's better. Let's get back into this. So your harness, the front of it has what's called a belay loop right here. You have a waist belt. That waist belt goes up above the hips. Tighten the waist belt down first, then tighten your legs down. It's going to fit so much better and it's going to be more safe. If you tip upside down, you're still going to stay in your harness. That's important. Another piece of equipment that I almost forgot to talk about that is essential for bouldering specifically is a crash pad. Now, if you're going to be getting into bouldering, you do need to get a crash pad, and I would highly recommend getting a crash pad that has good straps. As you progress, you're going to end up buying more than one crash pad. And your base crash pad needs to have some good straps on it for packing it around into those areas. Unless, of course, you live in an area where you just drive directly to the base of the boulder and throw your stuff out, which is a unique problem that I've only had in Utah. Nowhere else that I've lived I've had that opportunity. But everywhere else, I've had to pack it in. Now, I've had a lot of different crash pads over the years and a lot of different companies. My favorite crash pad is a crash pad. I've actually been promoting this company for over 5 years. I absolutely love them. I used to have a discount code for them, which is Kinetic Climbing. I'm not sure if I do anymore, but it doesn't matter. Because, I would love to have a discount code for you guys because it is a great product. And that is the Kinetic Crash Pad Newton. The Newton Crash Pad from Kinetic Climbing. And that's because it has amazing straps. And you're able to add pads to it and be able to pack that around. It makes it such a huge difference being able to do that. Some other companies that I would highly recommend is Asana Climbing. I think that they make a great crash pad. They don't have the awesome straps that are thought through like the Kinetic pad does, but they are really good pads, and they would make a fantastic secondary pad. I would love to get my hands on actually a stripped down Asana pad. Their foam is fantastic. It lasts a long time. Another one that's really popular out there, which is a good pad, however, they don't last as long, and you may be saving some money up front with it, which is the Mad Pad by Mad Rock. They work great. They're probably the most out there. Like when you go to a bouldering area, guaranteed you're going to see a Mad Pad if there's other climbers there throughout the day, if not like all day long. They're great pads, but I feel like they tend to wear out a little bit faster over time versus these other ones. I've also made my own crash pads. I've had Metolius, several different Mad Rock pads. If you want the best pad right out the gate, check out Kinetic Climbing. You will thank me later, I promise. Now that is the absolute basic of the gear that you're going to use, and I was going to stop right there. However, talking to my wife about this video idea beforehand, she said, you really got to go into a little bit more of the gear for it to be the ultimate guide to beginning rock climbing. So we're going to do that. We're going to jump into carabiners. There's several different carabiners that you are going to get eventually, and they're right here. These are the three types of carabiners. We have our non-locking carabiner, and then two different types of locking carabiners. Now, this locking carabiner is more for utility, and this locking carabiner is more for belaying. And we can tell the difference because of the size of the material that this is made out of. For your utility carabiners, even though they're just as strong, they're going to be thinner. This one is rated for 24 kN. This one is rated for 25 kN. So it's not really about the strength that we're after, but it's how the rope moves around the carabiner when you're belaying. So your utility locking carabiners are they're important to have a few of these. Don't use them for belaying unless, it's a gree like this. It'd probably be okay with that. But if you're using a ATC or stick plate where your rope runs around the carabiner, you're going to have to get a carabiner that's designed for that has a thicker material right through here for the rope handling. So those are some of the carabiners you're going to want. As a brand new beginner climber, I would probably say get 4 utility locking carabiners and get 2 carabiners that are designed for belaying. That'll get you a good start out. Now, once you've been climbing for a while, it's like they have babies and they just multiply like rabbits. All right, let's talk about belay devices. This right here is going to be the most simple belay device, and it's not the safest. However, even saying that it's not the safest, this is a great place to start because it's really going to train you to be vigilant about your brake hand. This is called an ATC. Black Diamond named it an ATC, and that name just stuck. You can also call it a stick plate if you're really, really old school like myself, a stick plate. But I still call it an ATC. Okay, how this works is a loop of rope goes in through one of these slots, through the carabiner. This cable right here is just there for you to secure this and keep the stick plate part with your gear. Do not wrap around that with your rope. Okay, it just goes through one of these slots and around the carabiner and out. It is super critical that you always keep your hand on the brake side of the rope as you are using this. When you are first learning, I would highly recommend having a person there to teach you and also do it with top roping because it's a little less risky because your climber is not going to fall as far as they could if they're lead climbing. So learn on top rope, preferably by someone there that is showing you exactly how to do that. Now, the reason why I say that this is the best thing for beginners to use is because it's going to teach you to always be vigilant with your brake hand. Always keep your brake hand on the brake side of the rope. Never let it go. This is a lot more advanced belay device. It's called a gree, and it's been the standard across climbing gyms for a super long time. The rope gets loaded in here. One side goes up to the climber. The other side is your brake hand. When there's a load on this camming action pulls up and closes, pinching the rope. And it actually stops by itself. So let's say something happens to your belayer, like he gets smacked by a rock and is now unconscious. He's unconscious. This device can still stop you in theory. Now, to release the climber, you pull back on this handle and release that camming mechanism so they can come down. There's other companies that make devices like this. This is one by Mad Rock. It'll save you a few pennies if you need to pinch pennies, and it works almost as good. I don't want to say as good, but it works almost as good. I use this baby a lot, and I like it quite a bit. It's a smaller size, and it works well. Now let's talk about quick draws and bolts. This is specific for sport climbing. So in sport climbing, you have fixed anchors called bolts that are attached to the rock face that you're going to be climbing. And as you climb up, you're going to take one of your quick draws. And let me grab a quick draw that isn't older than you. I've been fried on other videos about my old gear. You technically should retire these things, any soft gear, about every 5 years, which I don't. But you should, because it's recommended by the manufacturer. So this is a quick draw. The side of the carabiner, you have two carabiners on here. They're non-locking. One side is going to be a lot more firm to the dog bone, which is the webbing in the middle. And that is the side that your rope goes to. So the side that is a lot more floppy, can you see that? Look, I'll turn it upside down. You see how that one stays up more than that one? So the one that's floppy, that goes to the bolt, and then you clip the rope to you. And that sound right there is going to be a wonderful sound. It will automatically make you calm down. I'm safe. That's what that says. So when you clip onto this, make sure that the side of the carabiner that is facing you is the side that the rope that's going to your harness is going. As a climber, you're probably going to want to start out with 8. The magic number that I've had is 8. If you have 8, you can do most sport climbing. Annoyingly enough, they usually come in packs of 6. Buy a pack like this. This is just a super basic quick draw from Black Diamond. Black Diamond is a good company. Petzl's a good company that I would recommend using. They make good quality stuff. There's other companies too. Just make sure that it's rated for climbing and it's a legit company. I wouldn't get an Amazon or a Temu special. You're trusting your life into this. Do you want to really like go to a knockoff site and buy it to save, 50 cents? You're trusting your life in this stuff. Get the good stuff. But this is a super basic one. I would get the 6-pack of these and then buy 2 more that are single, that are a little bit more robust or a little bit longer dog bone. I have this golden one here that I showed you earlier. This is actually longer. So if you look at the length, this one is longer. And that can come in handy in different areas of your climbing. I hope you're sticking with me here. I know that this is going to be a long video, but I hope that it's also worth it. I'd love to see these comments down below so we can continue this conversation down there as just another note of that. So we've talked about all of the gear except for a rope and trad gear, which I'll just kind of briefly get into trad gear, but let's talk about the rope. Here is a climbing rope. Now, climbing rope is a dynamic rope. It's something that you want to get when you buy your rope. Don't buy a used rope thinking, hey, this is going to be good. Manufacturers of rope recommend that they only be used for 5 years. That includes just sitting in a bag on a shelf. If it's 5 years old, get rid of it. That's manufacturer's recommendation. I can't say that I've done that. I actually will soak my ropes in a solution to help regenerate those fibers and keep it going for a longer time where it's nice and stretchy and healthy. You want to inspect your ropes and make sure that they don't get overstretched, flattened. That is a possibility. Climbing ropes typically have a maximum falls, so once you've fallen hard on a climbing rope over a certain amount of times, you're supposed to retire them. Look into that when you are purchasing your rope. Those are things to look at. It must be a dynamic rope. I would recommend nothing bigger than 10.5 millimeters. And if you're using a single, which is what you should do as a beginner, I wouldn't go smaller than a 9.5, and that's just because of the handling of it. When it gets smaller than a 9.5, I found that it is more difficult to handle, especially if you're using what I recommend for beginners, which is just a regular ATC. If you're using a gree-gree, I would still not recommend anything smaller than a 9.5, but there are people out there that use smaller stuff, maybe in like a 9 or a 9.2, and love it. But this is my opinion. Go between a 9.5 millimeter and a 10.5 millimeter rope, and you are going to be happy with it. I'm just going to briefly talk about this gear right here, which is going to be your trad gear. The trad gear, they're different shapes. These are stoppers. They are shaped in a specific way to help you wedge them into cracks. You have tri-cams. Here's a tri-cam. This is designed mainly so you put it in and it cams into place. It's a single action cam. You have hexes. Here's a, I wish I got out some of my bigger hexes so you can see it better. But this is a hex, and it kind of sort of cams into place as well. They're pretty easy to find positions for, but you're gonna want to have a whole bunch of variety of shapes, and it can get a little bit more complicated. These right here, these are cams, and they've pretty much taken over for trad climbing. They are much easier to place and secure, but they are expensive. This guy right here, I don't know, probably costs around $100 just for this one piece, and you're gonna want a lot of them, at least 10, to get out there and start climbing. If you're gonna get into trad climbing, don't be overwhelmed by this. Just slowly purchase your own gear and build it up over time. And then once you've been climbing for 30 years, you're gonna look back and be like, I've got tubs of this stuff and I never use it. Dad life. Now you may think that we've talked about all the climbing gear that there is that you need to start climbing, but there's one more thing that beginners especially need to have in their kit, and that is what I call a bail beaner. A bail beaner is a carabiner that is rated for climbing, rated to hold your weight, but doesn't cost a lot of money. It's called a bail beaner because there's going to be times, especially as a beginner climber, if both you and your partner are getting into it about the same time, you're going to start a climb, a sport climb, that you don't feel confident or comfortable completing and getting over those cruxes. So you're going to bail on that route, meaning that you're going to come off and leave some gear behind. Some of this gear, like this one right here, this is a brand new quick draw that somebody left behind. Now, I told them that I could go get it for them, and they said, go ahead, keep it. So I did. Now, there's some, I've got a couple more bail carabiners or quick draws in here. They were left behind. I have no idea how to reach out to those owners. They have become a part of my kit, And I use those sparingly because I don't know the history of those. And it's really important that you know the history of it. But to keep yourself from leaving an expensive quick draw behind, get yourself at least one bale beaner in your kit. And when you get to that hard part that you just can't complete and you need to come down, you'll thank me, because leaving one of these behind is a lot better than leaving one of your fancy quick draws behind. Now let's get into the grades and some of the lingos. First, we're going to talk about bouldering. Also, this grading system, I'm just going to focus on what we use here in the United States of America. I haven't actually been able to climb outside of America. I would love to go on some international climbing trips, but I haven't, and I don't know those grades very well. I have made some comparison charts in the past, so maybe, but I'm just going to stick to exactly what I know and what is commonly used here in the USA. Bouldering goes by the V scale. The V scale starts at 0 and goes up from there. Now, the V0 should be actually pretty hard. It should be comparable to a 510, which we're going to get into here in a minute. So in the spreading of climbing gyms, we have included, we've kind of gone down on the scale and included a VB. So indoors, when you're climbing, if you're brand new, you want to try bouldering out, VB is going to be basic, beginner, easy stuff. So VB is the lowest, V0, and then it goes up the number scale there. And it should be limitless. It should be able to go up as hard as we are able to climb right now. I think it's debated on a V17. As climbing has become more commercialized, the V scale, I believe, has been watered down a little bit, especially in those beginners grades, because you want to see improvement. And if a V0 is hard and maxing you out and you're not seeing any progression, then it discourages you from trying harder. So it's been watered down. Now, I've tried to stay true to the V scale. Each number is should be twice as hard as the last. However, in, let's say, the climbing gyms that I've set and graded at, or the climbing gym that I owned and operated, you could climb there and be climbing V3s. You'd go to another climbing gym and you'd be smashing V5s, but you couldn't touch them in my climbing gym because I was trying to stay true to that original scale. But it's really subjective and personal to the person that first climbed that. So don't get lost in the numbers too much. The V does not stand for vertical or variable. It actually stands for vermin. The man that created the V scale, his name is John Sherman, and his nickname is Verm, which was shortened from Vermin. It was a nickname given to him, or that he adopted because a teacher called him a vermin. Yep. Yeah, thank you for that positive reinforcement. Now let's get into the roped scale. So when you are roping up, you're going to be using the YDS system in America. It stands for Yosemite Decimal System. It starts out at 5. So the first number is going to be 5, and then it should go 5.0, 5.1. However, in climbing, we start at 5.5. That's usually the easiest that I see out there, is like a 5.5, or we just say 5.5. Now, if you are following the decimal system, when you get to 5.9, you would go to 6, right? Well, that's not how it works here. We decided to just keep, instead of it being like a decimal system, think of it as two different numbers. So a 5'10" is harder than a 5'9", and a 5'11" is harder than a 5'10". So just think of those as two separate numbers. They're the hardest one that I know of. When I was younger, Chris Sharma established the first 515, and the numbers can just continue to go up from there. Also, when you get into those double digits, we throw a letter at the back of it. So 510A, 510B, 510C, and then 511A, 511B, 511C. The higher the number, the higher the letter, the harder it gets. Now, beginners are going to be climbing 5'5" to 5'8" in general. And then as you start to progress, you're going to start to climb harder and harder and go up the V scale based on how much commitment you put into it and what you can do. So there's the scales that you can that are used in America for the grading system. I hope that helps clarify some stuff and helps you when you step into an environment that has these ratings and helps you navigate to what you can do. Let's talk about the basic skills, absolute basic skills. I want you to do an exercise. So if you're watching at home, try this exercise. I want you to go ahead and do a handstand and time yourself. Put down in the comments how long you stood with your handstand, or if you already know how long you can hold a handstand, put that down below. I'm pretty sure that it is less time than you can stand just standing regularly on your feet. When we are climbing, the floor becomes vertical. It's in front of us, and we tend to forget that our body is designed to support itself with its feet. That is still true in rock climbing, and we need to help our body be supported by our feet. So our hands are there just to pull in and put that weight over our feet so we can climb good. Footwork is super important in rock climbing, and you need to watch those feet. Place those feet well. Use the toes of your feet because it gives you a lot more movement side to side and control of what you're doing on the wall. Try to use the skeleton of your body instead of the muscles. So if you're climbing and your arms are always bent like this and you're climbing, well, you're going to use a lot more energy than if your arms are straight and your body is relaxed and all of that pressure is coming down through the skeletal system and then back to your feet on the wall. It makes a huge difference. So try to use the skeletal system, keeping your arms straight, moving a lot from the shoulders and the back versus bent arms, trying to hold yourself up just with your fingertips. Use those feet. The feet are critical in climbing. Now let's get into the why. Why should you climb? And I actually want to read a little creative writing that I just put down today that will help explain why. So let me grab my book. Now, as I'm reading this, so you're not just staring at me, I'm going to put some random B-roll up on the screen, like a beautiful sunrise or something that, I titled this Anti-Fragile. The smooth grooves in the sandstone provide just enough friction that when I slap my chalked hand on it, I just might be able to pull myself up the wall. I study the sloped holds from a distance and give it a try. At first, my open hand seems to be glued in place against the stone. I start to pull, moving my body into the next position to progress through the boulder problem. My once solid hand slips off the hold, leaving a thin layer of skin behind. This isn't the first time the skin on my hand has been thinned by the grinding action of the rock, and it won't be the last. Because of this action, my hands have developed soft calluses, extra layers of skin to be stronger than the tasks I ask of them. In life, we have challenges, trials that can wear us thin. In those moments, it can seem like a cruel thing and gives us no benefit. But just like the soft calluses developing over time, so do those lessons from our life's challenges. Embrace them, find the lessons, and move on. Attempt that boulder problem again. In essence, climb on. Climbing is a life lesson, a microcosm that we can put into our lives to help us see the greater picture. I love climbing for that reason. It has given me so much. Even though I've never progressed into that really hard climbing, climbing has taught me those lessons, and I am grateful for it. I hope that this video has found you well, especially this message of being able to try and move forward through those trials that may be in your life. I hope that you've enjoyed this video and it's made a difference. Like, share, subscribe, comment down below, and I will see you next time right here on Climber Dad. Climb on.